welcome. Students, here is Sam.
Engage.
Yeah, the founder of Fulfillment Source Code, and Sam will tell you more about it. And he's written this fantastic book that I was looking at the other day. So, Sam, welcome, and I'll just leave the floor to you to take it from here.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask a couple questions first. We've got a number of participants. Please let me know. I'd say raise your hand, but just type in yes if you've been sitting down for about more than 20 minutes. Because if you've been sitting down for more than 20 minutes, have you been sitting down for 20 minutes? If you're listening, if you've been sitting down for 20 minutes, I need you to stand up. Okay, get up. Stand up for just a second. Just a second. Just stand up. Oh, God, I stretch. I don't know about you, but after 20 minutes, I'm exhausted. My brain is already ready to go to bed. So everyone stand up. I say, give me 25 jumping jacks. Just get up for a second. I'm going to ask you a couple questions, but stand up as you're doing this, okay? Thank you. All right. Thank you, Nichelle. All right. Quick question. Today, I got to share my screen. I don't know how to do that. Who here has a problem with social media? Raise your hand. Just put your hand up. How do I share my screen? I think my keynote. I have no idea how to do this. This is, here we go. All right. I'm going to try and do this for the first time. All right. Let me know if you have any problems with social media. Who here looks at social media before they go to bed? Anybody? Does anybody look at their phone before they go to bed? It's okay. I'm not going to tell your parents. Just let me know. This is I want to know. Anyone? Anyone? All right. Michelle, you should know better. Come on. All right. So we got some people. That's fair. That's cool. That's cool. Now, real quick, before I start today, and I'm going to get myself off so you can watch this. Today, we're going to go on an adventure, okay? We are going to go through the jungle. We're going to go back in time. I'm going to share some things that your parents wish they knew when they were your age. And then finally, we're probably going to hear from some dead people. Yeah. So that's what we're going to do. Now, if there's a way that I can turn off, I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? I'm figuring this out as I go. I apologize. I'm not very good at this whole thing. I think I'm going to stop my video. I hope you can still see my screen. Do you still see my screen?
Yes.
Let me know if you can still see my screen. All right, good stuff.
Yes.
All right, I'm not going to try to not distract you. Let me see if I can do this though. Nope, that's not it. Play. That's still not it. How come this is not allowing me to go to the next? This is very strange. Share. I feel like I'm doing technical difficulties.
Yeah, just do a slideshow, Sam.
Okay, so this is what we're talking about. People being sad, pictures are happy, and the impact of social media on young people, and basically how to manage it. Now, I've got about 20 minutes to give you the why this is happening. And my goal really is to give you this information to essentially change your whole life. So let's see how I can do this. All right, so in a nutshell, it's about your brain, right? And brains ultimately want to avoid pain and seek pleasure. That, if I had to stop right here, that would be it. All right, good talk, everybody. But instead, let me change this up a bit, and let me start by blowing your mind with a little bit of a story, okay? Now, so when I was a kid, and this is a true story, my father used to say things like, it's okay to make mistakes, just try to not make the same mistake twice, which I thought was very fair, right? And then one day, I saw this ant walking along this rim of a wide, shallow bowl. And this ant, it walked along the edge, it made a full circle, and it kept walking, right? It went around the dish 3 times. And it dawned on me that it would continue on this path because it couldn't see the mistake that it was making. Now, we humans, we're actually not that different because the number 1 and the number 2 priorities of our human brains are actually the exact same as the ants. All right, I just want you to stay with me on this, okay? This is going to be important stuff. So there's this brainiac, this guy called Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize, and he's the author of Thinking, Fast and Slow. And he talks about the 2 systems of the human brain, right? The unconscious and the conscious, the fast and the slow, the energy efficient and the energy inefficient. Now, if you are anything like me in like my first 40 plus years, I wasn't spending too much time thinking about my brain. Oh, where's this thing? Am I still in this? Oh no. I'm sorry. This just died on me. I don't know how to change this.
You're
My
still there,
computer.
Sam.
I don't. Okay, but unfortunately, I can no longer share my screen. I don't know how to change my screen. I don't know what I did.
Your screen, we can still see your screen thinking fast and slow.
But I can't change it. It just stopped on me. Oh well. Let me see if I can do this. There we go. Okay. Like me, you were right. Now, this 2 to 3 pounds of squishy mass between your ears is that every single thought, every single emotion, every single feeling, every single sensation, every dream, every experience that you've ever had or you ever will, it happens inside of your brain. I mean, if you think about it, if you think that your eyes are what see or your tongue is what tastes, just remember your favorite dream or your worst nightmare, and you'll realize that absolutely everything is a process of your brain. Now, these brains that we have, brains in general have been developing for like millions of years, right? And all have the same purpose. The number one priority of all brains is to survive. Because, well, if you're dead, nothing else really matters, right? But if you think about human brains, now human brains have been developing for like 200,000 years. And if you think about it, like 99.9% of the development time happened when like 99.9% of the stuff around us simply didn't exist, right? Think about it. 200 years ago, there was no electricity, there were no cars, there were no phones, there was no TV, and there certainly wasn't any social media. Now, another way of saying this is that your brain was developed and is much better suited for life 50,000 years ago, much more than, say, today. Now, your brain, it's like 2% of your body weight, right? But it consumes like 25% of the energy, right? Your brain requires a tremendous amount of energy, which then brings us to brain priority number 2. If I could press the button, and there you go. So the brain priority number 2 is to conserve energy. And this will make sense in just a second, which of course brings us back to the 2 systems of the brain, right? Most of all of your brain activity, it actually happens subconsciously, like 95% of it, right? Think of it like this iceberg here. So think about it. The vast majority of what's going on inside of your head, it's actually happening without you even being aware of it. I mean, could you imagine if you had to consciously think about breathing, about keeping your balance, about digestion, right? So one of my favorite quotes is this guy, you may have heard of him before. His name is Einstein. And he says, thinking is hard work. That's why so few people do it. Now, essentially, thinking, it's like the last skill that the human brain developed. And it requires a ton of energy, which the brain actually doesn't prefer. All right, so real quick recap, just to review, because reviewing is important. So number 1 priority of brain is what? It is survival. The human brain, it was developed more for like 50,000 years ago than today. And brain priority number 2 is to conserve energy. Because think about it, 50,000 years ago, it's not like you could go to 7-Eleven and grab a bite. All right, is everybody with me? Can I hear anything? Everybody with me? 3, 2, there we go. Thank you. All right. Okay. Now your human brain, it's smart. And inside every human brain is what I call a factory setting, like kind of like your computers. You got these factory settings. These are processes that like over the centuries were tremendously helpful, and your brain would prefer to not spend any energy. These are the things that are like shortcut survival shortcuts. Consider them like shortcuts for your brain, right? All these things that helped you survive. I mean, think about it. If somebody throws something at you, it's not like you have to consciously think, hey, maybe I should get out of that. No, no. If you had to think about these things, we'd all be dead, right? And your brain is absolutely full of these shortcuts. Again, these shortcuts, it's like this is what your brain wants to do, right? It's subconscious, you don't think about it, and it's your default unless, and here's the big thing, unless we consciously choose to override them, because we can. You see, all humans, we have a superpower, and our superpower is to adapt, because we literally learn better than any other animal out there. We're not super fast, we're not super strong, we don't have any cool claws, but we learn better than anybody. Okay, now our brain is the key here. See, when we learn something, we literally physically change the brain. Now, this thing is called neuroplasticity. It's not really that important. It means brain change. But okay, real quick question. Everybody, do you guys know what neurons are? Question, do you know what neurons are? Yes? No? Give me one. Thank you. All right. So if you think about this, like all of your thoughts and your actions, they actually correspond to various neurons firing in a sequence. And the more that you do it, the better they become. Like the more they fire together, the more they wire together. All right, so we're going to go on a little hike here, okay? So think about this as if you were to go through a rainforest, right? Now, the first time you go through the rainforest, it would be really hard, right? I mean, that's a lot of work. But the person right behind you, or the second time you went through that same rainforest, it would be just a little bit easier, right? And then you go on and on and on to like the 100th time, and then it would be super, super clear, and you wouldn't even have to think about going through this rainforest. It would be automatic, right? So easy. So instead of this rainforest, let's call it a brain forest. Get it? It's like a dad joke. Sorry, I'm a dad. I can do that. All right, so like, think about this. Remember when you first learned how to read and how hard it was? Like you had to think about all these different things. But now you probably don't even have to think about these. I bet you can't even look at a word without reading it for the first time. You do it automatically, right? You're now at that point. Again, the neurons that fire together wire together. And the more that you do this, the more automatic they become. Now, this can happen consciously, like when you learn to read, and it can also happen without you being aware of it. All right, raise your hand, give me a yes. How many people here have memorized songs or commercials or something like that without even planning on it? Raise your hand. Anybody? I know I certainly have. I was like, where's the beef? And I can't help. Yeah, there you go. All right, so repetition of something, whether you're consciously aware of it or not, it leads to the formation of these new automatic pathways, okay? And this is all critical. Again, repetition of something makes these things super clearer, stronger, easier. Think of it as practice. Practice doesn't make perfect, but practice makes permanent. Okay, and again, it can be consciously or just on its own. All right, so real quick, we're going to do this because repetition is important. It's important. Life, it all happens inside of your brain. And brain priority number 1 is survival, and brain priority number 2 is to conserve energy. And why is thinking hard? Because it's the last thing that we developed. In your brain, it prefers the shortcuts, which are basically better suited for life 50,000 years ago. And 95% of your brain activity is happening without you even knowing it. But your superpower is to adapt. That's right. You literally have the superpower to rewire your own brain. All right. Now, I would say I want you to think about this. That was like 10 minutes. We basically went through the entire how and why your brain works. So good job, everybody. High five all around. High five, everybody. Good job. Good job. Good job. All right. Now, again, the default settings that we have, it's better for life 50,000 years ago. So take a moment and think, what was life like 50,000 years ago? Probably a little bit different, right? Yeah. Now, for the vast majority of people alive today, survival is not a day-to-day concern, right? Like these shortcuts that we all have were developed under very, very different environmental conditions, right? These shortcuts that created these desires within us and actions that we take over and over again, they helped our survival. But today, the proportions are all off. Think about it. What was scarce back then is just super easy for us to get, right? Now, some of these survival shortcuts, unfortunately, they're killing us. Think about it. For the first time in human history, dying from too much food is actually a problem. Isn't that crazy? Like, to today's topic, humans were mammals, right? And mammals are social animals. In fact, our brains have been social longer than they've been human. So our brains are wired to compare ourselves to those around us. Now, not only is this like an immediate survival thing, but it's also a social thing, right? 50,000 years ago, it was really important to know where you stand in the tribe, right? For your various skills. Like sharing what you're good at was very beneficial for your survival. And being the worst, well, that could be considered a threat to your survival, right? Because if you're not helping out the tribe, you're out of the tribe. And if you're out of the tribe, game over. Now, 50,000 years ago, think about it. How often each day do you think you'd be able to see an example of where you're not good enough? Again, today, the proportions are way off, which then brings us back to today's topic. And knowing what you know now, how surprised are you that your 50,000-year-old brain software, it's being hijacked, right, by the billions of dollars behind the tech that's literally in the palm of your hands? Think about it. Remember how your brains avoid pain and seek pleasure? Well, there are a variety of neurochemicals that have already been discussed a little bit here that make you feel good, right? We don't have to go over all of these here. It's not important, but literally billions of dollars are spent by some of the brightest minds in the world researching how to use your brain chemistry against you. Think about it. We naturally want to have fun, right? We want to seek pleasure. So your natural instincts and desires in today's world, if they're left unchecked because of these proportions, can be very harmful. Okay, I think that's it for today. I can answer lots of questions. I can go on and on about sleep and how important it is and the blue lights and all these other things. But really what I want to do today is give you a chance to ask some questions. Because at the end of the day, I hope at the very end of this, you're not like that ant. I hope you can get off this path, and I hope you can find a better path. Now, before I go, I want you to all think, what was the most important thing that you got out of today's 20 minutes? Don't be that ant. I'm going to finish here. I'm going to find a way if I can stop sharing my screen. Boop. I don't know how to do this.
Thank you, Sam. Those were some great points. We are running out of time, so we have quite a few questions from the audience. So let us head right to the Q&A.
All right.
Social media can be quite addictive, especially with young kids dedicating majority of their time scrolling through Instagram posts or even Snapchatting themselves with their favorite filter. With so much time being drawn into online activity, what is the effect of social media on the educational system and the students' ability to pay attention to their academic performance?
That's a great question. So Saeed went over some of the brain chemicals that we get. He talked about dopamine and oxytocin and serotonin and the endorphins. And understanding what is happening to your brain. Every time you're scrolling and you're like, oh, ding, 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 you get like this drip of dopamine. And dopamine, it's the reward chemical, but it's also highly addictive. Dopamine is that drug that gamblers get, okay? So first off, understanding that this is addictive. And I'm gonna say this. It's not that social media is bad, it's too much social media is bad. So if you understand that it's like, look, I can do this a little bit, too much is bad. Now what's gonna happen in your brain, because everything happens in your brain, is you're scrolling through, you're getting drip, 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 drip of dopamine, but you're only getting dopamine. And one thing Sai had said is there's ways that you can engineer things to make your life better. And the easiest way to feel good is to do things with or for somebody else. Now, one thing you can never ever get from a screen is dopamine, is oxytocin, which is by far is my favorite. And when you do things with other people, you're getting not just dopamine or serotonin, you're actually getting like this cocktail. And that's when the real magic happens, when you're doing things with or for other people. Because you can have fun playing video games. It's like, you get a little drip. But if you do something with or for somebody else, then you get more of that. And that's what's most important. So understanding what social media does to your brain is the absolute key. Because if you don't know you're making a mistake, you're going to keep doing that. So that's number one. The second one is you don't want to be addicted. And the best way of not being addicted is to basically control what you're doing. I hope that helped. So again, the other thing it does is it distracts, because again, we seek pleasure, and we avoid pain, and we get a little bit of pleasure when we're looking at our phone. It's kind of like a spoonful of sugar every single time. Too much sugar is going to not just rot your teeth, but it's going to rot your brain and not good for your body. And too much social media is the same. A little bit's okay. Too much, not so good.
Absolutely. My next question is, as a matter of fact, we all know that kids in this day and age have become extremely smart, especially when it comes to using technology. Social media is a large platform, and with a click of a button, a picture can be posted online, which can be viewed by a mass number of people. Parents can be concerned about the safety of their children on social media. So, could you suggest a few ways in which social media activity can be monitored?
So the monitoring, well, okay, so I'm a dad. I have a 14-year-old daughter. And there's one thing that I do know is that I can try and control her with gates and locks and this and that. But I used to be 14 and it didn't work then. It's not going to work now. So the best way that I found is to inform my daughters. It's like, look, when you're out of the house, I can't control you. And I don't believe that's the way to do it. It's about giving this kids the skills, the understanding on what they can do and what are the benefits and the detriments. And sometimes, as a parent, you got to let a kid fail once or twice to see the problems. And again, allowing the kids to do that, within boundaries, of course. It's, as a parent, it's a scary time. But again, this is letting kids understand what is not just at stake, but what's going on in your brain and how you're training. It's like kids are smart, and give them the chance to thrive and also fail. As an entrepreneur, it's like fail forward, fail faster. Because that's how we learn. We learn really well when we're like, okay, I think this is making me happy, but it's not making me happy. Let me be self-aware about that. Yeah, this isn't really working for me, so let's try something else. And then give them those options. They have options. Let them know they have options, and that's what's working.
Great, great. As per your panel discussion, you stated the impact of social media on young people. There is also a famous saying, people are sad, pictures are happy. Social media has often
So
been utilized to mask the real pain faced. So, according to you, how are people able to hide their agony through the use of social media? And are there any solutions to this problem?
So one of the things that happens in social media, and I touched on this briefly, is like you can see within half a second, 50 million different people who have done some amazing things and how much better they are than you. And the brain looks at these things, and again, from our brains for 50,000 years, I look at it, I think about, I see it, and that's it. You're not thinking how many filters are on that were taken or used, or how many fails were there before they nailed that one trick, or how many times did they get the lighting and do all of this stuff to show that best thing. So it's showing an incredibly skewed perspective of reality. And the other thing, so the most important thing is for kids to be like, okay, my brain is under my control if I choose it to be. And that's the kicker. Because you can tell your brain, you can use one part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, to the amygdala, blah, 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 to say, okay, you're going to look at something like, oh my God, I'm just not good enough. And then another part of your brain could be like, don't be silly. Come on. You know that this person's using filters and doing these other things. And that self-talk, it actually works. And the cool thing is, when you decide to have that conversation, what you're doing is we're jumping off of this negative path that's already there, and we're choosing to go onto a more positive, more realistic path. And the more you do that, the stronger this one becomes and the weaker this one becomes. And it does take time. Think of it as like learning the martial arts or music or anything. It's like, it's going to take time to get better and better and better. And every day, if you can just be 0.01% better than yesterday, that it adds up. But every time you do it, and when you find yourself going, oh, this kind of sucks because look how good they look and look how crappy I look. You're like, no, come on, give yourself a break. Take some time. I'm a teenager, they're older or whatever, or whatever it is, but it's about you versus you. And every time you choose to go, no, I'm not going to take that path, I'm going to take this path, that one gets better and that one gets weaker. And that's what's important, because again, you do have that choice. You have the ability. There's a saying that I say to the kids, like, look, if you look for the bad, you're going to find it. But if you look for the good, you're going to find it too. They're both there. It's always a choice. Think of yourself as like you're on a bus on a road, and on the one side is the mountain and the other side is this beautiful vista. You can look on either side. Where you choose to put your attention, your ride, right? Do you want the scary stuff, the horrible stuff where you're like, oh man, this is beautiful? You can make a choice. And you can, if you start looking there, you're like, no, I'm going to go over here. You can do that. And the more you make that choice, that stronger that becomes. And the more it is, think about it. It's like 10 years from now, you're going to be an expert. You're going to be so much farther ahead than where I am now.
Absolutely, Sam. Couldn't agree with you more on that. We have one last question from the audience. With this whole pandemic situation, most of human interaction takes place online. Sahana asks, how do we deal with the fear of missing out?
The fear of missing out is like, that's a big one for today, Hannah, without a doubt, especially today where you're like, oh my gosh, there's literally 1,000 other things that I could be doing or watching or doing, and there's just not enough time in the day. So one, never before in human history has our brain been bombarded with so many options. Understanding that, okay, wait, just take a moment here. Not all of that is important, and it's okay. Part of what we're doing, it's like sculpting. It's like, didn't like this, I didn't like this, I'm kind of figuring out who I am. Understanding that you can't do everything, and that's okay. It's like there's that fear of missing out, and then mindfulness is like, be present here now and get the most of right now, and then do something else.
Absolutely. It was great to hear from you, Sam. Wish we could talk more, but it's now time for our next panel discussion. Thank you for your time and hope to hear more from you in the future.
Thank you very much. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. Bye-bye.